If you are a parent of an athlete, I want you to hear this. You are already your kid's most powerful mental performance coach. It's not me. It's not their strength coach. It's not their varsity coach. It's you. The way you talk in the minivan, at the dinner table, and after games is literally wiring your athlete's brain for either confidence or anxiety. That is a lot of pressure, and it's kind of daunting. And that's why I created my free email course called the Resilient Parents Playbook. In it, I walk you through the 5 most common mistakes we make as sports parents, and I give you simple, practical tools to fix them. You'll learn how to praise effort and attitude instead of just results, how to handle the car ride home, and how to help your kid manage nerves and pressure in a healthy way. It's completely free. Just hit the link in the show notes and grab the Resilient Parents Playbook and start becoming the kind of mental coach your athlete actually needs at home.
This is the Mental Mettle Podcast, where we explore how to forge mental toughness and resilience in every aspect of life. Welcome, I'm your host, Coach Matt Toman. I'm an ICF certified professional coach with a background as a teacher, basketball coach, and athletic director. But my journey took a dramatic turn in 2020 when I survived both cancer and a stroke. Those experiences shaped my mission, help others grow stronger in every facet of life. Today, I work with athletes, coaches, educators, and anyone who believes that positive mental health is both achievable and a personal responsibility. This podcast is dedicated to helping listeners develop a positive version of toughness, one rooted in resilience, focus, and growth. Whether you're looking to excel on the field, in the classroom, or in life, this is your space to learn, grow, and take action. Join me on this journey, and together, let's forge your mettle.
Welcome back again, Metalheads. It's Coach Toman here on the Mental Mettle Podcast. I'm going to get right into it. I got a great conversation today with Dan Stratford. Dan Stratford is the owner of Kick It 3v3 Soccer. Now, before you turn it off, in case you're not a soccer fan, but you know what? I think that's fading. Like, especially after the World Cup, like soccer is really growing, and I love it. I love the idea, and I'm really getting into it a little bit more. So, I don't think I have to say that as much as I used to. But regardless, the conversation goes well beyond soccer, because I think a lot of the things that we talk about today, Dan's expertise is in soccer, but it applies to youth sports of all kinds. So, and we get into, one of the biggest issues with youth sports is that we often give our youngest athletes our least experienced coaches. And that's a bit of a problem, because these are the kids that probably need the coaching the most. You could take an extremely inexperienced coach and put them, having them coach an NBA team or a MLS team, and they might do okay for a while because the players know so much. I'm not discounting the job that coaches do at upper levels, but it wouldn't show quite as much. But whenever we take somebody that's completely inexperienced and have them coach younger levels, it sets up some future problems. So Dan and I talk about that. We also talk about something that can help with that, is the idea of something he calls small-sided games. So something like, he owns a company called 3v3 Soccer, in which we talk about how playing soccer 3v3, or you could do this with basketball, 3-on-3 basketball instead of 5-on-5, which is now an Olympic sport, by the way, how it can be such a great developmental tool. It means more touches, more decisions, more creativity, more opportunities to fail. You get to learn, try, and get better and better and better. And I think it's a great way to look at it. It can be so useful. So if you're a coach or a parent involved in youth sports, I think this conversation can really make you think about what development of athletes should look like. And Dan has a bunch of great insight, very smart guy, knows his stuff. So enjoy this interview with Dan Stratford.
Your athlete probably spends hours working on the specific skill set they need for their sport, and they probably spend hours in the weight room building their body. But how much time do they spend intentionally training their mind? Well, building mindset is the key to bridging the gap between the skills that we see and game execution. Well, Mental Mettle Coaching provides individual programs that can help your athlete develop this third and crucial skill set.
All right, metalheads. It's the Mental Mettle Podcast, and I'm back here with my guest today, Dan Stratford. Dan is the, owns, runs, however you want to put it. I know how that goes. You wear a lot of hats, I'm sure, but affiliated with Kick It. You tell me, is it Kick It 3v3? Is that what you call it?
Yeah, Kick It 3v3 Soccer is our trade name. Our website's kickitsoccer.com.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think someone changed the domain to that before I bought the company because they had ideas of doing 4-on-4, maybe 5-on-5, not locking us into 3-on-3 only. But that's our major focus is still 3-on-3 soccer.
Yeah, so I know it's a soccer thing. We've talked a little bit, and we're really going to get into why bother with 3v3 soccer. We're going to get into that, kind of like why do we need 3-on-3 basketball? Why are those why it's not something we even need to worry about? The sports are, soccer clearly is doing well on its own after all the success we've seen on the World Cup stage, but why the 3v3? So we're going to get into that. But first, I'd like you to give you the chance to introduce yourself, because I love the credibility that I have with my guests, and people are reaching out to me, want to be on the show. And I absolutely love it, because I'm getting people that have had a lot of experience in not just their sport, but in helping kids, which is exactly what I'm all about. So give me the, I always say the Cliff Notes, but then I realized that, man, I got to get rid of that phrasing, because nobody, like, you and I get it, right? But it's fading quickly from our lexicon. So give me the Chat GPT version of Dan Stratford.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Kansas City in the 70s. I was born in 1967. In the 70s in Kansas City, soccer was not a thing, and I always tell my kids, and I have 5 kids. They're all grown, empty nester. Always when they were growing up playing soccer on the varsity team or whatever in high school, like, when I was a kid, it wasn't cool to be a soccer player. We were kind of like the rock the musicians, right? And in fact, if you were a musician in the late 70s, early 80s, or a soccer player, guaranteed you had a mullet at some point, right?
Yeah, I'm guessing in the 60s and 70s, your musicians might have been a little bit cooler than your soccer players.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But they were still the rebels in high school. That kind of thing. But I tell you that because in Kansas City we didn't have people who had grown up playing soccer. St. Louis was kind of a hotbed because of the foundation of for some reason the Catholic culture there was big into soccer. So a lot of our national team players would come from California, New York, or St. Louis, before they came from Miami, Chicago, or Dallas or something like that back in the 70s. But so I was diagnosed with ADHD at a very young age, at 3 years old. My mom was in a clinic. We had moved to New Orleans. She was and going to the doctor. She was pregnant with my little sister, and this doctor walked in, and he saw me bouncing off the walls, running around. My mom was only 20 years old. He sees this beautiful young lady who looks a little stressed out. And he says, "Hey, I'd like to help you. I'm doing a national study. It was one of the first studies on ADHD in the country, probably.
Well, I was going to say, when you're throwing out born in the 60s and you're saying ADHD, like that, you must have earned that diagnosis, because they didn't throw that around like they do now.
No, I did. You're right. That's what I tell people now. Legitimately ADHD, not just saying it because I'm having a bad day and I can't focus.
Yeah.
But and all that is to say, in fact, it was funny. They put me on this medication. They didn't believe my mom when she told them Ritalin didn't work, and they put me in a 24-hour study. And they're like, "You're right. Ritalin has no impact on this kid. He never sleeps." Right. So
yeah.
So and between that, I had a very high I also had very high IQ, and so between those two things, my attention span was a bad
combination for a mom.
Horrible. So if I'm trying to play baseball and I'm out there in right field or at shortstop or whatever, I'm zoning out unless the ball's hit to me. And by the time it finally gets hit to you, you panic because it's only been hit to you once in every 30 minutes, right? So I loved basketball for that reason, because you got to play a lot. It was small sided already because it's 5-on-5. You go out and play basketball by yourself with just a hoop. The problem was I was small for my age, so it was hard for me to be, great at basketball, even though, I had the athleticism to do it. So soccer was brilliant because, the coaches weren't yelling at you because they half the time didn't even know what to say. You could just go on the playground and play. It was about pickup soccer. My soccer background was more similar to my friend who grew up in Brazil, where we just played pickup soccer all the freaking time. And I was able to have some success with that because I would always go up against whoever the other team's best player was that was like a head taller than me. I was like, I'm not sure I can out dribble this guy or outskill this guy, but I sure can stop him from dribbling around me and steal the ball from him and create a transition. So I found my own success and growth in soccer that way. And so that's kind of how I fell in love with the game. And your parents didn't really know what soccer was, so they didn't know how to tell you what to do better or worse. We lost every game the first season I played soccer. It was the funnest season I'd had in my whole life because I just got to go run out, get the ball, take it down the field, make stuff happen. That was a blast of it. And like I said, we didn't have coaches back then, but what came to the country was called Major Indoor Soccer League, MISL, which was small-sided soccer, 5-on-5 plus a goalie. And to your point, we were talking about this earlier. We think as Americans, we see the pro version of a game. Or even we're in college and we're remembering the first time we played American football or basketball or soccer or whatever sport it is. We remember the high school version of that game that we played. We don't remember what we did when we were a little kid, even if it's t-ball necessarily, right? But small-sided games are what any good coach uses to develop players. Even in baseball, you're not playing 9v9 baseball during practice. You're dividing up the short stops into groups of 3. You're hitting the ball after ball after ball, right? So small-sided soccer, we have a saying in soccer that the best teacher of the sport is the ball. And so the more you're touching the ball, the better you're going to be. And so when professional indoor soccer came to Kansas City in the late 70s, not only did I get to go watch pro players play, but I could find an indoor soccer match every night of the week. And at one point I was playing literally minimum of 1, sometimes 3 1-hour-long games a night playing soccer. And I went from being a very mediocre but athletic soccer player to every year I was winning the award for most improved player. And one of the only kids out of my high school, really the only kid in my graduating class that played professional soccer at all. And I didn't start my junior year in high school. I was injured the day before my senior year started and hardly played my senior year. So small-sided soccer was a big factor in helping me touch the ball 100 times more, it felt like, than in an 11v11 game, get composure in front of the goal, which, if you play an 11v11 soccer game at 8, 9 years old, 10 years old, you're lucky you get one chance to score in the whole game, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's like being that shortstop who has the ball hit to him once a game. If you panic in that moment, you suck. You're fired as shortstop, right? Yeah. So that kind of that's kind of my background growing up in the 70s and 80s, kind of playing soccer. And I guess the only thing I would add to that is, like a musician, I had which I was into music quite a bit, and I sing with bands and do stuff like that now too, as I've gotten back into it in my older age. But I had a very rough high school life in that my the economy was bad. My dad's business was failing. We went from being a rich family that raced Porsches on the weekends to my dad going bankrupt and being addicted to cocaine and dying in his 40s of a drug overdose, right? So it's funny, I can talk to people now who assume any success I've had in my adult life is because I grew up rich, but I started with absolutely nothing, but so when all that was going, when that turmoil was happening in my family, I just played soccer all the time. You get home from school, go play soccer. And actually it was basketball and soccer were the two I played all the time. Because I could play by myself. I could juggle in the backyard with the ball for hours, dribble around trees, kick the ball off a wall, do whatever. I could get a couple friends. Didn't matter. Just me and the ball a lot of the
Well,
time.
I think maybe that's our first segue into the importance of youth athletics in that, like, it's, you wouldn't be where you are now if you didn't have an outlet like athletics. And
Yeah.
that's how, I mean, it's that important for a kid, especially when we never want to advocate for anybody, no matter what age, to run away from whatever's going on. But sometimes you need that reprieve, and you need somewhere, you need an outlet, you need someone to do something. And that's why that having that opportunity for you has had to be like just unbelievably fundamental for your upbringing.
Well, yeah, because all you're focusing on, you're literally just focusing on the ball and you forget about everything. We talk about as athletes getting in that zone, but that zone means the whole rest of the world is gone and you're
Mm-hmm.
just focused on something that you love that makes you feel good, that happens to be healthy. I think if I would have gotten more into music back then, then probably the marijuana scene would have followed
Yeah.
that because that was
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
big part of it. But the soccer scene for me, most of my soccer buddies actually didn't drink, or we were total nerds. We didn't drink or smoke weed in high school.
Yep.
Yeah, so, and I knew a lot of soccer players a year above me and different generations that did a lot of that, stuff because it was the
Yeah.
'60s, it was the '70s and '80s. But I got in with a really good crowd. It was very healthy, and soccer was a great escape. It probably helped that my parents could not criticize me on soccer. Like
It's
they, they just
listen,
saw us having a good time. They didn't have any expectations.
I expectations are this, so like this fine edge, right? Because a lot of times expectations are the reason that we become what we become, right?
Yeah,
They drive us, they push us. But the other side of that line is the undue expectations are that we put on a kid too early, too much, too fast, are the
yeah.
reason they don't succeed. It is probably, I think, the hardest thing for parents, that line to walk, is like, what expectations are okay, what level are okay, and then how much do I push on that?
Yeah. No, and I have 5 kids grown. I have five. My fifth grandkid's supposed to be born here any day. Might have been born while we're talking on this phone, or while we're having this meeting. Um, and I made tons of mistakes, and I didn't always know, when do you push, when do you, when do you care, when do you stick,
Yeah.
when are you just supportive, and it's a hard thing. One thing I like about sports is it, versus a lot of other things in life, is that it's, for me, it's a little more black and white on
Mm-hmm.
how, like, I'm not sure how to get my kid to do their homework, man. That's a tough thing, but
Yeah.
I'm sure how to encourage them in soccer and the right way and support them in that. And truth is, the skills are similar. Like you talk about, praising the effort, right, and
Yeah.
and not results. Um, uh, although, I remember I had one of my kids. I tried that on him, and I said, my son Tyler, my oldest, he was like, "Well, Dad, I got all C's, and that's average. Are you saying being average isn't good enough?" And I'm like, "How do I answer this question?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"Well,
Very carefully.
yeah, a C means the average intelligence person put in average effort and
Yes.
got a C, right? You are, and it is true. He has a very high IQ as well. I was like, you are very smart. Average effort for you should be at least a B, and a little bit of effort for you should be an A. So this is more indicative of the effort you're putting into the school, not how good you are. So
Yeah, because
I
it goes
did try
both
that.
ways. When you talk the effort, praising the
Yeah,
effort instead of the outcome,
yeah,
that means that you can, like, what people hear from that is that, hey, we lost, so I gotta praise their effort instead. But it also
yeah,
works the other way, right? You may have
yeah.
won and gotten an A or a B, but you just dogged it because you're so much better than everybody. That means I gotta
Yeah,
have that same sort of, I gotta be like,
yeah,
look, I don't have a lot to praise here. I know you won, but I mean, you did not give any effort. You didn't even get hustle. You weren't talking. You weren't leading, right? So it goes on both sides of that line. That's why I love it so much, if we can do it well.
Parents, is your athlete ready for the upcoming sports season? They might have the strength, the speed, and the skills, but without confidence, they could still struggle when the game is online. Skill and strength are great. They're necessary, but they're not used to their full potential without the right mentality. Confidence is key. It's the key to unlocking that full potential. And at Mental Mettle Coaching, I offer personalized sessions designed to build the confidence your athlete needs for a successful season. My proven techniques empower them to perform under pressure, both on the field and in life. Don't let a lack of confidence hold them back. Book a free session today and discover the power of confidence. Visit the website and get started on the journey to a more confident and successful athlete with Mental Mettle Coaching.
So one of the things that I heard years ago that I just loved is development is always winning. Winning is not always development,
Yeah.
and you can win a game, to your point. Hey, we won that game 10-0. Okay. But how do we make the most of it? And I think even as a coach, when you're coaching a game where you're outmatching the other team, you can work on different things. Like even as a player, I would play a whole game left-footed if the opponent was so weak, right?
Yeah.
You try to avoid doing things that condescend the other team.
Exactly. You don't want to show anybody up, but no, I get what you're saying, right?
Yeah, you try to come up with some different goals, but it works the other way. And so one of the other things that happened to me that was very wonderful was in my late teens, I had some really good coaching mentors. I had a Palestinian gentleman who was an excellent coach and a mentor for me, only a couple of years older than me. I ended up playing college ball with him my freshman year. British soccer camps, the founders of British soccer camps started in Kansas City. So I got to coach for them, and their coaches were mentors for me. I had Doug McClagan, who was a pro player. Got to play with Stan Cummings, who was an English professional, player. Not the best coach, but a great player. Nigerian, wonderful national team player named Dr. Emilio John, who took me under his wing. And so I had these great coaches that were teaching me how to start coaching little kids. And the problem is most soccer players out of high school, out of college, even pro players, you can give them a 15, 16-year-old team to coach. They'll figure it out. They remember what it was like to attend a practice at 15 or 16. You give them a 6, 7, or 8-year-old team, they, best case scenario, don't know what to do. Worst case scenario, have a panic attack, right?
Yeah.
And so I started learning how to coach with hundreds, even probably thousands of hours. It felt like in a year coaching 4 and 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds. And that's when you really learn how to teach. And now I've coached high school state champions. I've coached private lessons for professional and college players, getting them ready for a season. But my heart's always been that developmental, helping kids, learn how to love the game and develop it at a very young age. And I've done wrong things. Like I've been that parent that was way too high pressure. My poor son, who still loves soccer, thank God. I was at high pressure, living vicariously through my 4-year-old when I was, 24 years old. And so I've done it wrong.
No. And it's easy to do because we want what's best for our kids. And that's how it comes out, right? It comes out as that love that we have for them comes out like that. But man, you've got to learn how to temper it. You just do. And working with as we were talking about, like, unfortunately, and I don't know what the fix is for this, but a lot of times we need some of the best coaching techniques when kids are younger. And a lot of times it just gets to fall to whomever is available. Right. And that's there's some good youth coaches, but we don't really put a lot of emphasis on it in any sport. Honestly, it's not just a soccer thing. We don't put a lot of emphasis on youth coaching and who's doing it and how we're doing it.
Yeah. And, I've been proud of the fact, I've been pleased and blessed and just that I've been able to be involved in, some of the solutions to that problem, because the biggest challenge is, like I said, when we start coaching anybody at 5 years old, we remember the professional level game or what we played at in junior high, high school and beyond. And it's a completely different, that's a different human you're dealing with at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And so there's a way to coach the sport that matches their personal and social development. And and when I moved to Colorado back in '96, I was in tech for, I've been in tech for like 3 decades. When I moved to Colorado, I finished my degree. I stopped coaching full time, but I started coaching for local clubs. And a gentleman who's now a business partner of mine at Kick a 3v3 Soccer, grew up in Brazil. I met him as a coach, and we started coaching and playing together. And he started this program in Colorado because competitive coaching didn't start till under 11. So you couldn't play competitive soccer in Colorado till 10 years or older. That's not the case everywhere, but here it was. And the challenge was, a lot of times I get a player by the time he's 10 or 11, I spend the first year or two breaking bad habits. That they don't have the proper technique. They didn't work on the right things for the first 6 years. And a very skillful sport like a tennis, a soccer, a basketball, where there's, every player has to have ball skills. Mm-hmm. The younger they start with that, can make a huge difference. There's exceptions, but for the most part, that's a very important part of developing the skill when they're younger. American football, is the opposite, right? You probably shouldn't play football till high school. You do all these other things to work on your coordination, and then you learn the game, right? It's more of an athletic sport, and not to diminish the skill involved, but
but it's. I'll have that argument with JFL football coaches all day long that we don't need tackle football at 5th grade. Like it's a detriment. It doesn't. We don't need it. We can just take the team with the athletes and let them figure it out at freshman level, and they're going to be fine. So
but and not to say that teaching proper tackling technique, running technique, all those things can make a big difference. It is. Even with the heading controversy, should little kids head the soccer ball? I argue that they should, but they need to be taught the right technique so they don't get hurt, so they don't get concussions, because that's where the injuries can occur, is when you don't know the proper technique for heading the ball. You're going to crash into people and those types of things. So in this country for a long time, soccer they were starting out 11v11 at 7 years old, 8 years old. Yeah. No country and the rest of the world is doing that. When they started organizing their sports, they've been playing small-sided soccer for decades. It's not something they just started in the last 10 or 15 or even 20 years in this country. But so we had this situation where there's all these rec teams around Colorado where it's parent volunteer coaches like yourself or me or whomever, and they may have grown up, more and more were ex-soccer players who at least played some rec, high school, maybe college soccer. They still didn't know how to teach little kids. And so we started this program where you sign up for rec, you pay a little extra, and someone like myself or Zico comes and coaches the coach every week. So they would have 2 practices a week, and we would coach the coaches on how to coach 6 and 7 and 8 and 9-year-olds. And I found it very encouraging because I used to blame the parents for making it difficult to coach kids the right way. You used to say, give me a team of orphans and I'll be a happy coach, right?
Yeah.
But what I found is when I trained the parents, when I'm coaching their kid at 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8, whatever, and I said, look, this is what we're focused on at this age, and this is why. For example, 3-on-3, I'm never going to ask 3-on-3 players at 5 years old. So at 5 years old, I'm never going to ask a 3-on-3 team to spread out, to pass. Really, 3-on-3 is 1-on-3 when we have the ball. And actually, it's kind of 1-on-5 because half the time I'm fighting my own team for the ball, right?
Yeah.
So it's 1-on-3 and 5-on-1 when the other team has the ball, And so that's the perfect time to what are kids good at 4 or 5 years old? Being selfish. So why not lean into that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I want Johnny, if you think you can take that ball yourself selfishly and beat everybody and go score, please do. And that's I tell kids at that age, that's the whole thing, right? And even when you see, when your kids are 4 or 5 years old and they start playing with other kids, they certainly don't play well. Right? That's not their strength, is playing well with others. So why are we trying to get 3-year-olds to spread out and pass the ball when they're such concrete thinkers? They only think about what's happening to them
Yeah.
in that moment and as kids get older, you start introducing, hey, now what can two players do with one ball, right? And then what can three players do with one ball? And so small-sided soccer is great for that development when they're young. As they get older, it's great because all the things that they need to do in a full-sided match, which is make quick decisions, have a great first touch, have a great last touch, have confidence on the ball, have composure when you're in front of a goal trying to score. Imagine you're playing basketball and you only get to take 1 or 2 shots a game. How nervous would you be on those 1 or 2 shots? Usually when you play basketball, you get like 15 shots. And if you make 10 of them, you're happy, but you're building composure playing basketball because it's small-sided and that. So as they get, so the older kids can benefit a lot from small-sided soccer because of the quick transition from offense to defense, defense to offense. From quickly, when your teammate gets the ball, I got to be there to give them support, 100%. And there's certainly lots of touches, faster play, tighter things. That all translates to the big game because the big game, at the end of the day, is mostly just a bunch of triangles.
So I hear, which is, I get that. So the word that keeps popping up in my mind and on the importance of that is creativity.
Yeah.
It has to be like the 3v3 versus the 11v11. There has to be more. It has to be helping kids learn some creativity around the sport. Am I way off on that?
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, one of the, typically what happens when you coach a competitive team is you have tryouts, you have, now I got to get my season ready. I got to plan all of these full-sided tournaments. I'm under so much pressure to win those tournaments that my players aren't getting that much playing time. Right. And whereas if you sign up for like a small-sided tournament, it's just a day of creativity, fun, taking chances, showing off. We'll get kids, they're doing their rainbow, they're doing the Ronaldinhos, they're doing these Brazilian moves because they're able to do that. And there's not as much pressure. So it kind of brings the fun back into the game. And that's one thing that, a lot of American players lack is creativity at the end of the day. That's one of our biggest challenges. The other big problem with youth coaching that I try to get parents to understand is, and coaches for that matter, is the over positionalizing of players when they're like 8 or 9 years old.
That's not that's not just a soccer thing.
Yeah.
That's just about every sport.
I'll bet. I mean, I bet it happens in basketball because guess what? Johnny hit puberty at 12, and he hit 5'5" at 12, which is the tallest he'll ever be. Because you look at his parents; they're both 5 foot nothing, and I've had that happen. Like a goalkeeper, he's a head taller than all the kids. His parents think he's going to get college scholarships, but when his parents walk up to me, he's taller than them, and he's 5'6", and he's 13 years old. I'm like, guys, I'm glad he's playing goalie and he loves it, but this is not going to be his career.
This is one. So I used to be a school administrator, and this is probably I made up this saying that I think it's, I say a lot of things. I'm a podcast host. I said, but I think this is probably the one thing that I say that I think I'm most proud of, and that is that junior high state championships are won by the team with the most mustaches. Period. End of story. And that's not to give anybody a hard time. It's not a good indicator of long-term success.
No, it's not. And it's one of the problems with college sports in this country is they're trying to recruit the best high school players sometimes. In soccer, this really hurts, a lot. Myself and my oldest son, we went into high school like 5'2", came out, 6 foot. He came out, he grew 2 inches after high school to be 6'2", right? And he was still starting for varsity soccer by his senior year, but the kid that won all state whatever had a mustache. And my son still looked like he was 12 in his senior year in high school, and he ended up, a lot of things happened for him after high school. And that was the same thing for me. I kept improving, kept growing. And that's another challenge with soccer in this country is the college sports really aren't a great developmental program for a lot of reasons, but certainly not for soccer. They tend to be pretty good for basketball because a lot of basketball, that's a big sport. Um,
Yeah.
they're good for American football because what's detrimental as American football player is playing American football. In other words,
Yeah.
you can't play it in the off season to get better. You need to rest in the off season, weight train, heal,
Yeah.
recover. The skilled sports, like meaning where every player on the field, well, let me put it this way: every player on the field in soccer is a quarterback, and even more challenging than a quarterback because stuff's happening 360 degrees around you, right?
Yeah.
And you have to do everything with your feet. And you still have as many guys to worry about. You're on the field with 22 players, right? You and 21 other players. So the mental and skill and every player on the field has to be, he can't be he's not blocking for a quarterback, right? He's
Right.
got to be able to touch the ball and make decisions. So that sport requires playing all the time to get better. And so the college format doesn't really work for it. They used to have a lot of restrictions on even how you were allowed to play soccer in the off season, which was ridiculous. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, so I think that's one thing. You look at, and I'll say this. So Malcolm Gladwell had a book years ago that came out. I love this book. It's about being a big fish in a little pond, little fish
Mm-hmm.
in a big pond.
Yeah,
And
because he in there he talks about the importance of like when you're born, right? Like if you're
yeah,
born, if you're the oldest, like
yeah,
it which makes it so arbitrary on
yeah,
who's so good. Yeah.
yeah. Well, yeah, he does talk about that. If you're born January through March, because that's the
Oh yeah,
cutoff
you're
date for the
great.
year in that
Yeah.
sport, you're getting the better coaching, and that most of the pro players are that.
Yeah.
That's a great thing too. But what I was
Yeah.
talking about was more it being a big fish in a little pond. Some players get hell bent on making as good of a team as they can make when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
tryouts. It's better to be on a team that's a bit lower level, play at a bit lower level, where you're getting much more playing time, playing much more different positions. I guarantee you, that player that's playing central midfielder for a lesser team versus stuck at right defender for a top level team is
Mm-hmm.
going to be a better player. In fact, I had when I was coaching at Shawnee Mission Northwest in Kansas City, I'm head coach of our sophomore team, and I got this player who I knew for years. He was playing on one of the top teams in Kansas City, Udinese at the time, and I would help coach that team sometimes, so I was familiar with him. And he was right fullback, right defender for it must have been 4 years. But he made the best team. He was their starting right defender, and I had a conversation with him. I said, "Well, um, what do you want to do with your soccer career? I know you've been playing for a top team for 4 years. You've been back at, right fullback, which means they kind of want you to just get the ball and kick it down the field, right? It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
very dynamic back then." And he said, "Well, I want to play college ball." I said, "Well, you need to stop playing for that team.
Yeah.
You need to get on a lesser team because I guarantee you the guy that's starting right defender for a college team probably has the skills of a forward or a central midfielder or an attacking player on a high school team." And he became my starting central midfielder. The season after, he quit that team and went to a lesser team. And by his varsity year, he was starting central midfielder for our varsity team. And
Yeah.
I don't know what he ended up doing in college, but I imagine he had much better opportunities
For
because of
sure.
that.
Yeah, I mean,
And so,
you get exposed to more.
yeah,
You work on your flaws. You work on what you can do, what you can't do. You
yeah,
just get better at it. You have that opportunity, and you have to be able to. And if that means going down a level, and I get it. I get challenging yourself, and you want to challenge
yeah,
yourself, and there's a benefit to that. But
yeah,
there's a downside too. That you're not getting the opportunity to try a different position, try a different tactics,
yeah,
and there you go. His creativity level, just sitting there playing at fullback and just kick, like you said, there's zero creativity there. He's not
yeah,
learning. He's not
yeah,
learning, right? So
yeah.
yeah.
So,
So
so I think that's the other
yeah.
thing that parents do is they push their kids too hard to be on this top team.
Mm-hmm.
I 3 years ago, my daughter was on a top team for one of the clubs here. Gosh, 3 years ago. Gosh, now it's like probably 6 years ago. It was a year or two before COVID. And she got moved up to the top team. The coach was not playing her very much. And I went to the club and I said, "Hey, I'd like my daughter to move down to a lower team because she's not enjoying herself. She's not getting playing time and she's not developing." And these coaches have known me for a long time and have been coaching for decades. They never had a parent in 20 years ask them to do that.
Yeah.
Uh, and I was like, well, guys, if we're not doing that, well, what are we doing here? Because I'm not just playing lip service to those things. It's my kid. My ego's not tied to her being on the top team.
Well, you just said it right there,
Yeah.
right? It's whether that's when you're talking about the things that parents do wrong, it's tying your ego to your kid's success, and that's not a good thing. Yeah, that can be a problem.
It can be. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's do a little thought experiment here. How about that? So if you could redesign youth sports from scratch, and let's go soccer here, what would it look like?
Yeah.
Like there's never been any before, and you're creating it from scratch. What are you starting with? What are you looking at?
Yeah, I think that at the very young age, the kids need to have the ball all the time. So whatever they're doing, just let them have a ball that they're playing with. It doesn't even have to be with their feet. We used to run a program inside preschools, and it was about coordination with the ball, and they all had a ball for 30 minutes. But I think the biggest thing that has to come out of it is the desire to win at these young ages, and it's not. I think we all need to want to win all the time, right? That's our goal, is to win. But how we define winning, and this last year I got kind of back into coaching little kids in a couple 3v3 tournaments because we opened up our registration to individual players. And so we had like a bunch of 6 and 5 and 6 and 7-year-olds sign up for teams. And I wasn't comfortable. One of the things we offer with our company is we'll get them one of our coaches from our camps that runs our that maybe coaching a camp, a college kid or something, at the very least pay them to coach this team for the day, the 3v3 day, where they have between 4 and 6 games. And I wasn't comfortable doing that because I knew they're probably going to get whomped. I'm putting 5 kids together against other teams that have been together, and it could discourage the coach, it could discourage the players. And it was a 95-degree day here in Colorado. And I sat the parent. So I took on the team. I sat the parents down and said, "Hey, look, this is what we're going to do. Our goal today is to get better from our first game to our last game. I'm literally not going to pay attention to the score of our games. I'm going to ask your kids to keep score for their individual effort. So when, Johnny makes a pass or makes a dribble or tries to make a dribble or gets back on defense or makes a run on offense, things that may not have a direct impact on us winning the game, give yourself a point." And I'm telling the players, give yourself a point out there. And they would come off the field and they're like, "How many points do you have?" And they're like, "I have no idea. I think you got 5 points that time, Susie." And she's like, "Yeah, I got 5 points. I made a tackle. I made it run." And then that set the tone for me as a coach during the game. I wasn't just cheering for, scoring a goal or whatever. I was cheering for, "Susie, that was a great run. I loved how you supported Johnny on defense." Just looking for ways to encourage them. And then at the end of the day, they were so happy. I literally didn't know we had lost every game because I thought we might have won a couple because there was, there were some close ones. And, and, kids are hugging me at the end of the day. The parents are happy. And this was for a Highlands Ranch tournament. And Highlands Ranch is like one of our more successful type A neighborhoods. And I live in Highlands Ranch as well in South Colorado. So people here have a reputation of, they're attorneys, they work for Google, they're type A, they're the parents, they're the achievers, they're the helicopter parents. And yet they were also smart. They're also educated. And when you take the time to talk to them, this is why I'm doing it this way. This is what's best for your child. This is why it's best for your child. And I think when we stay there, focusing on that, really focusing on what's best for the kid, meeting them in the place where they are, rather than even, where we have an idea of where you want them to be, but meet them where they are and encourage them for there. I think that those are the key things. And soccer's taken some steps over the last 20 years of at least going to small-sided games with the younger kids. But the biggest mistake is we get the least experienced, least qualified coaches coaching the youngest kids. I would almost do it the opposite way. I can get, like I said, I can give any pro or college player or a high school team to go coach them and figure it out. And as long as
They
they
don't
don't,
even need them.
right? They
They
don't.
would, like, a lot of them, they don't even need the coach, right? Like, by
Right.
the time
Yeah.
they're 16, 17, they're like, oh, they could sign up a lineup and let's do this, let's do this, do this. And at
Yeah.
times I think they might be better off.
No, you're right. When I coached high school, the 1 year I won state, in Kansas, they couldn't have a varsity person coach who wasn't a teacher, and none of the teachers at that time had grown up playing soccer really in the mid 90s in Kansas. So I technically was head coach of JV, varsity assistant coach, but I looked at it, I was just managing the talent I got. I wasn't developing, and I tried to do as much to develop in the preseason and during the season for sure. I had that element of I was going to make them better players technically, but at the end of the day, 90% of my job was management and motivation, and put him in the right places, developing a style of play, and that's a fun thing to do, but it's different. It's a different skill than coaching a 5, 6, 8-year-old, and
Yeah.
if they get all that great coaching when they're younger, and you get them in high school, I mean, and to be fair, when we won state, I had 11 returning varsity players, and we had won second in state the previous year.
Yeah.
Nobody patted me on the back for winning state because I had all this talent. I was an idiot if I couldn't win the state championship.
Yeah.
So
that goes back to our conversation on expectations, right? That could have gone either way. I love your point system there, because especially if we're talking about, let's say if we look at soccer and we're talking 11v11, I mean, a really good soccer game you could have a really good soccer game that's 1-0, right? And if the only way that we judge our success is by whether or not we got a goal, that means there was an opportunity for one person to feel like they had success that day. And that's not enough. That's not enough for 5, 6, 7-year-olds. It is not.
No.
Like, we have to have some sort of system or some sort of way to coach them to let them know that they're having progress and recognizing that progress, because I don't think we do enough of that. And it's got to be part of the reason why the 3v3 is so much better for the kids.
It is. And so I think that, the key is really educating the parents. They are, that most of them are pretty smart. You set them aside and you have a conversation with them. You do it in a tactful way. They're like, okay, well, that makes sense. If I want my son to be a lawyer, I don't put him in law school in 6th grade. Right?
Right.
If I want to be a doctor, I don't give him a scalpel when he's in high school. At least not on a live body. I mean, so everything, all those things take, a realistic expectation.
It's scaffolding, right? We have to understand. We have to see it that way. And I think that I love the idea of what we're talking about is like, if we look at youth sports through the same lens that we look at pro sports or college sports, we are doomed to fail in so many ways, and we cannot see it that way for a lot of reasons. So tell me, plug the 3v3. Like, how does it work? Like, plug the business. I love this idea, and I'd love to help you share it.
Yeah, so 3v3 was founded in 1990 by Dan Kramer, who was an ex-professional basketball player, also the founder of 3v3 Hoop It Up Basketball. And his daughter was playing soccer in the early 90s, and so he kind of wanted to support her. And she ended up actually playing for the Olympic women's team and as their starting central midfielder. She's a coach out at BYU right now. Kind of retired early from international soccer because she wanted to have a family. But so throughout the 90s, and it's funny, he came at it from a basketball perspective. He made these goals 4 feet high and 8 feet wide. And I couldn't have goals that big now. And my theory is back then, an American player couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with a soccer ball anyway, so it didn't matter. But these goals he wanted it fast paced, high scoring like basketball, right? And so that was his heart. Now, we're already if you're a good coach, you're already using small-sided games as part of your practice, as we talked about earlier. Even baseball, basketball, football, it's chunked into different, small-sided activities, if you will. And so it's a very fun sport. We bought it like 3 years ago. It had kind of shrank during COVID, and Kevin Garnett came and bought the company along with Hoop It Up Basketball back in 2016, 2017, took the focus off of soccer. So we went from being 100 events across the country down to about 12. And I've been in tech for a long time. I got laid off for one of these companies I was working for, went back into consulting, and I wanted to buy a business that I wasn't just building another marketing agency, but doing something to use my business acumen. And Kick It came up for sale. So I called my buddy Zico, I'd been coaching with for decades. One of the only guys I would let coach my kids for the longest time besides me. And we bought the company, and we've always been bullish on small-sided games. He grew up in Brazil playing in the street all the time, in the jungle, actually. I grew up playing a lot of street soccer. It has that mentality of, creativity, cheering players on, a lot of fun. But it truly is a way to let the ball teach the game. One of the challenges for 3v3 soccer is that as a coach, you have to be prepared when you're coaching the game, because if a team is 10% better than you on a full-sided game, you can hide players, you can pack it in, you can keep the score close, but 3v3 will reveal your team's weaknesses. And so you have to have a positive attitude going into it that, hey, we're going to get exposed today on the things, so let's get better during the day. But all that is to say that while it's the only thing appropriate for the young kids, it's still beneficial for 8, 9, 10, all the way up to through high school as a fun day of feels like pickup soccer, but it's some healthy competition. We are working on skills, developing creativity, developing mental quickness as well as physical quickness. And we do have about 10% of our customers tend to be adults playing, because the pickup community for is just growing immensely around the country. Pickup soccer has just been growing like leaps and bounds. Certainly on the East Coast, but when I moved to Colorado, I could drive around, see a park, and go play with some guys. So it's great for that development. It's great for fun. The nice thing about it is that, a lot of times my son might play on this competitive team, but none of his classmates are on that team. Right. His classmates play for this team. For a 3v3 tournament, because we're not sanctioned, they can get together and parents can form their own teams, and it's not like they're just kind of managing the kids. So you don't want to overcoach them anyway. Yeah. So it's a really fun way to get some healthy competition. We do have national championships and all that kind of stuff for people that really get into it, but really it's for just about everybody. And we see some coaches who they have in the off season, they have their teams play in 4 to 6 tournaments a summer, because it's a great way for, they're not coaching, they're just letting their kids play, for 4 or 6 Saturdays.
Again, it's that low pressure, high creativity.
Yeah.
That's how you grow. So if somebody wants to get in one of your tournaments, where do they find it?
Yeah. kickitsoccer.com. And we have events coast to coast. We'll start getting those back up on the website for this next year coming up. We're going to start doing some stuff in Texas and Florida, some of the southern states this fall and winter. If they don't have one in their area, we'd love to come in and do a fundraiser for their club, or we're actually still looking for directors in different markets who want to kind of have a little small business of their own, where they're running their own 3v3 tournaments, and we train them and give them support from corporate and all those types of things. So very cool. kickitsoccer.com. Right. Check it out. Yeah.
Very cool. All right. My last question I always ask is, what's the question I should have asked you that I didn't? Like, what's the burning question that we should have talked about?
Yeah.
What's the question a good host would have asked here?
Yeah, man, I think you, it's a good thing. Look at some of my notes. Let's see. I think that why do we do sports in general? Why are sports important? And it's the same thing in music or theater, or there's all these extracurricular activities that we do where we learn how to challenge ourselves. We learn how to learn. We are part of a team. Yeah, I minored in theater in college when I went back and finished, and I realized this is like being on a soccer team. We got the lighting guys, the sound guys, the actors, the director. You can't do it all. You have to be able to do it all together. So the life skills you get and how to push yourselves. When I was 19, 20 years old, get married. My girlfriend got pregnant, and we got married. Didn't have to get married, chose to get married, right? And all of that. I had to figure out how to make a living. And I started out in sales, and because they would hire you if you could fog a mirror, if you could sell something. And a lot of the metaphors were
Yeah.
around sports. How do I get motivated to do this? Well, how do you score a goal? I mean, you just they're the life skills that should be the focus.
Yeah.
And now I'm almost 60. I can't go play soccer. The three things I could learn at my age, I started learning 3-4 years ago. Racing cars. I raced cars for like 2 years. I got really good at doing that. Not good enough, nobody's going to pay me, right? And then a couple of years ago,
Sure.
got back into music. And I love the learning process of I'm singing in bands, I'm playing bass, I'm doing stuff like that. And I love that learning still. And I even look at my teachers, my music teachers, my racing teachers, auto racing teachers, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's how I would have. That reminds me of how I taught soccer. Yeah. So I think that those are life skills and how to learn, life skills and how to teach, life skills and how to motivate yourself properly, overcome adversity. I mean, really, that's what we're talking about, because 99.99% of us aren't going to make a living doing it, right?
That's correct, and that's my pitch on what youth sports are for. It's a somewhat safe way to face adversity and learn how to face adversity and overcome
Yeah.
adversity and learn to do it.
Yeah.
Get better at it.
Yeah.
That's what it's for, and that's
Yeah.
what you can. When we were talking about, hey, it can't be all about the winning, and I know you hear the voices. That's just loser talk, or that's something a loser.
Right.
Well, I'm just telling you that it is. These sort of ideals and things that we teach, when we do that for the kids when they're young, they trust me, they go on to win. they
Totally.
just do, because they know
Yeah.
how to deal with things, and they know how to get better, and they know how to improve, and that's what you have to do in long term. So
Yeah.
I'm
And
with you.
even, in my 20s, I wanted to be CEO of a tech company. Right.
Sure.
Well, I had a lot of things to learn. I had a lot of steps to get there.
Yeah.
They wouldn't even give me the interview for being a CEO. Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No.
I mean,
No. I got you.
um,
I got you.
so that's that's a life skill of understanding where you are in the process to get, you can't be an attorney like we talked about earlier. I can't decide to be an attorney in 6th grade. I'm going to be an attorney. I got things well, if I want to be an attorney, what should I study in high school and college? What are the things to prepare for that? So there is some future thinking of how you're going to win at the end,
Sure.
possibly, and that guide your journey. But as you and I know, our journeys can shift too. We're not.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but neither one of us thought we'd be doing this 20 years ago.
No, and that's the thing. Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's like I get a lot of times. It's like when you're the coach and you have a parent and that you haven't talked to, and you get a parent and an athlete that come up and they're like, "Hey, we want to, we want to be able to like get a D1 scholarship to play soccer or something like that." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"That's fantastic, but we should probably worry if we could dribble with our other foot yet." Right? Like,
Yeah.
let's not.
Right. Yeah.
Let's do this first. Like,
Yeah.
let's do we got that's step 485, and we're at
Yeah.
step 5, right? So, and that's what, and you
Yeah.
got to put the work in, you got to put the time in, and as the adults, as the coaches, we have to design practices to help them do that rather than look at the end result. So yeah.
You do, and then of course, it sounds like a trite thing to say, but I've seen some players, just they start getting injury ridden at 19, 20 years old, and so thank goodness they had strong academics. So what they learned from the sports wasn't going to help them play professional soccer, but it's going to help them be successful at life as long as they're applying it and those other things. Because hopefully, unless God takes away your brain or some kind of accident or whatever, you kind of always, that's the one asset unless something drastic happens, that's the one thing you have. And, but sports, builds on that, builds your brain and learning. Yeah. So man, I think that's the key. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I love the conversation, Dan. It's great. I wish you the best with your Kick It 3v3 league, and I love what you're doing with youth sports and trying to make it better. It's a message I'm trying to put out there, and you and I agree on it. So we're on the same team here, and so your success is my success, and hopefully vice versa.
Well, yeah, and you got that Believe poster in the back. I mean, could Ted Lasso have come out at a better time than during
Well,
COVID
not
and
for
and
not for a
all
guy
that
who
stuff?
was not for a guy who was struggling.
Yeah,
I was mentally struggling at the time and getting over a stroke and struggling
yeah,
things like the amount of the amount of excitement I have about that show. It's an unhealthy level,
yeah.
but I'm okay with it. You can I-
I'm there.
you're
I
Kansas. You're
tell
a
you,
Kansas City soccer guy. You like
dude. Yeah, no, I went to high
yeah
school in the same district as that guy. I know the neighborhood. He's
yeah
back in KC. I go back to KC all the time. I'm
yeah
totally Jason Sudeikis. But
yeah.
I watched that show. It's funny. The first episode, we could do a whole podcast on this show.
Oh, listen,
The first
don't get me
episode,
going.
I remember watching it going, oh, this is gonna be another show that's stupid and makes fun of soccer. And the
Mm-mm.
end of the first episode, my eyebrows went up and went, hmm. And by the third episode, I was like, this is the greatest thing ever, and
Yeah
I still
yeah.
cry on the dart throwing scene. I can make myself
Listen.
cry on the dart throwing scene. The whole be curious, not judgmental. I mean, it's just full of nuggets.
I love it. I can yeah. Again, we got to get her shut down because I will be
Yeah,
here all day talking about Ted
yeah,
Lasso.
right.
Maybe that's a
All
follow
right.
up episode. Maybe we just need to do the wisdom of Ted Lasso for coaching.
Yeah,
That's somebody's probably done that already, but I might have to do my version. So if I
dude,
do,
I'm right
I'll
there
give you
with
a
you.
call.
We could
Yeah,
get a
yeah,
panel of people on that one, I think. All right.
it'd be
All right.
great.
Hey,
Yeah.
been great.
Coaches, do you dream of guiding mentally tough athletes towards a championship? Kids that are resilient, persistent, and unshaken by setbacks. Well, in today's world, those athletes aren't born. They have to be developed. Many athletes face significant challenges and risk burnout. So, how do we foster that mental toughness without overwhelming them? Well, introducing the Ember to Inferno program, Building Mentally Tough Athletes. This series is designed specifically for coaches, offering a deep dive into your own journey of mental toughness and equipping you with practical tools to build confidence and belief in your athletes. Rather than just simply adding more adversity to their life, we focus on creating a strong foundation for mental resilience. You'll learn how to transform a spark of motivation into a blazing fire of toughness, using techniques that address challenges like social media pressures, athletic stress, and trauma. Don't just wish for mentally tough athletes, build them. Join the Ember to Inferno program today and ignite the potential in your athletes. For more information, contact me, Coach Toman, at Mental Mettle Coaching.
So again, I think one of the most important things from that interview is the idea of how, and it's unfortunate, it's nobody's fault, it's just the way it is, but that we put some of our most inexperienced coaches in front of our youngest players. And that's unfortunate because the more experience you have in the sport and how to develop it, especially, is kind of what we need to have in our youth players or our youth coaches, youth programs. And it's just not what's happening. And we understand it. Again, if you could take somebody who really doesn't know much about the sport, that's very inexperienced, or say just played a little bit in high school or whatever, but so they know what a practice looks like, they know the fundamentals of the game, and you could coach some kids that are, say, 15-year-old or older, that really kind of have a basic understanding of the sport, and you could get out there and the sport would look like the sport. Again, not to diminish the job that really good high school coaches and such do, but if we take that young kid and put him in charge of some, soccer players that have never played the game before, it's a different story. It takes a lot more experience and ability to be able to take those young kids and help them learn how to play the sport. It's a completely different job. And that's what we need to be thinking about, because a lot of times what we do when we put that inexperienced person that doesn't really understand the sport as much as somebody who does, it means that they may not be focusing on the development like we need. And they're maybe coaching in a way that helps them win the game, which I'm all for winning, but they're not necessarily coaching the athlete to win the game, or they are coaching the athlete to win the game, but not coaching the kid in front of them to become something better, because those aren't the same thing. Winning and becoming better are not the same thing. And it's something that we need to think about in how we do that and how we teach that and how we change that in our American sports culture. It's not an easy thing, but I do think that a lot of good programs that I see, and regardless of the sport, we have some more experienced individuals coming down and teaching concepts, not just to the players, but to the coaches that may not be quite had as much experience. So I think that's very important. If you're a coach that's a little bit more experienced and you are part of a bigger program, how are you going to do that? How are you going to make sure that the coaching is done in a developmental way, um, to help what's best for the athlete, not just winning the games? And that brings to the second part of the conversation, and the part what Dan is really good at and what I really love is the idea of the small-sided games. Obviously, it's his business, but he built his business because he thinks this is really important. And I think that 3v3 is such an interesting concept because it's so good for development, and it allows kids to participate more. And I don't just mean like playing, but like in the game, because you could say a kid's participating, but in 11v11, man, they may never even touch the ball. So if they get a chance to touch the ball, make decisions, make repetitions, do all these things, it's more experience, and you're getting a chance to um, try and fail or try and succeed. And both of those are so important for the development of an athlete. It helps. And the other thing I like, it helps them create that creativity, which I think is so important for somebody to love a game. Uh, Understanding how that we can try things differently and have fun with it, and know that I'm going to try something. It could work. It could work well, and it may not work well. And it helps them understand the game more. And that's what we want, because we want to create athletes that see the game, that make decisions, who can solve problems, do all those things. And it helps with their development. But remember that development isn't always winning. Okay. Development also isn't always being on the best team. We talked about that too. Development isn't always playing against the toughest competition. Sometimes it's just playing more. Sometimes it's playing a different position. Sometimes it's allowing yourself to make a mistake. I just love that idea where he talks about, because we see that a lot. And it's cool that he saw it in soccer, because I see it all the time in AAU basketball and baseball. We're so concerned about playing on the best team possible. And I understand that you want to challenge yourself, but sometimes the development of an athlete comes from us allowing them to try so many different things. We want to challenge, we want to play against good competition, but not so much that it hinders all our development. Does that make sense? And that's a fine line. I completely get that. But sometimes I think we cross that line all the time and say, well, they have to play on the biggest team and best team they can. Well, but are they actually playing? Are they being challenged, or are they getting put in a from a basketball perspective, did you just get to go to the best team and now your kid just doesn't play that much? And when they do play, they're down by 20. And when they are playing, all they do is go stand in the corner and shoot threes. Are they really having the opportunity to get better? You've got to make sure that they're having an opportunity to be challenged, get better, and do all those things. And Dan, just so many cool things from that. And I love his ideas and how we need to look a little bit. I think the main idea, we need to be a little bit more intentional with youth sports on the development. And I know I sound like a broken record, but more about the development, less about the winning, and less worry about what team they're on, and less worry about whether or not they're going to get the exposure they need. When they need to be asking, instead of like, who saw us today and did we win? It's, what did we learn? What did we get better at? What did you figure out today? How were you creative today? That's development. That's what we're trying to build. And that's something we should really be focusing on. Dan's doing a great job. Check the links. Check the link for all his stuff, the show notes. And man, you'll find all that stuff that Dan's doing. I really, I believe in what he's doing. I think it's a great thing. And that's the more that we see of that, people investing in the development of our young athletes, I think the better we're going to see not just people that are better at the sport, but more, mentally healthy and focused on the right things. And that's what I'm all about. So thanks for joining me. If you get a chance, if you've made it this far, I appreciate you so much. Do me a favor, like, share, subscribe. The podcast is growing. It only happens from you guys doing that. You see this, share it with somebody, share this episode with somebody, get on social media and make a comment, share it, like it, all those things really helps me spread the message. And that's what you can do for me. So thank you so much for listening, and thank you for doing those things. So, but for now, I'm out of time. This has been the Mental Mettle Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Matt Toman. Always remember to forge your metal. Thanks for listening to the Mental Mettle Podcast. Don't forget to tune in every week for more insights and strategies to help you forge mental toughness and resilience. This podcast is brought to you by Mental Mettle Coaching, where we are driven by a passion for sharing knowledge and experience that empowers others to play, live, and grow with confidence. Our mission is to instill a resilient and spirited mindset in our clients, enabling them to confidently face adversity and actively seek new challenges for personal growth. At Mental Mettle Coaching, we offer individual coaching, group coaching, and professional development for schools and businesses. Whether you're an athlete, educator, or professional, we're here to help you unlock your potential and thrive in every area of life. Until next time, keep growing, stay resilient, and always remember to forge your metal.